Hi, it's Chris from Quirky Neighbor, and in today's video, I am going to talk about pricing. Now, pricing can get a little emotional, and people might get a little scared by it because, like, oh, you got to do all these crazy calculations. But it's important. You need to know what you need to charge people so you can make a profit, and that's the reason you're doing this, right? You are trying to run a business and make some sort of profit, but off of it. So what I'm going to be talking about here specifically in the context of a print-on-demand shop running off of Etsy, but a lot of these concepts will apply really to any sort of selling situation. You basically look at what you're charging the customer and what does it cost you to fulfill that transaction. And it's basically that. So let's look at the elements that are important when we're looking at this particular type of shop. So we're looking at a spreadsheet here. This is essentially the type of calculation I've been doing with my own shop, and we're actually going to start on the right hand side in this section here, the POD vendor costs, because this is like your first knowable number, I think. So every vendor, you're going to be able to look on their site. You can look at find the items you think you want to sell. Okay, what are they going to charge me for the item, and what are they going to cost me to ship it? And of course, and it just is a caveat, the shipping here, you can get do as many different variations as a theme on this as you want. Keeping it simple right here, I'm simply looking at what does it cost to ship from the US within the US. If you are, depending on the vendor and where they have shipping locations, so, some have locations like where they do fulfillment within Europe or within Australia or within Canada. And so you need to understand the variables there, but most of these, I have found that they're all very clear on what shipping costs. So find out what they're going to charge you for the item and what are they going to charge you to ship. Okay, so in this case, so I've put in two items here. One of them, they're going to charge me $7.95 for the item itself to print it and everything. And then they're going to charge me $6.99 to ship it. For this other one, they're going to charge me $10.95 for the item and $6.99 to ship it. And so that's your starting fixed cost. And it just as an FYI, I'm not taking into account here sales tax. That is an added layer of calculations. But I think this approach here will give you a good gut check on, like, am I anywhere in the ballpark of where I need to be to make a profit? Okay. So, as I said, this model here I'm talking about is doing print on demand, selling through Etsy. So Etsy has its fees. So we've seen what the print on demand vendor is going to cost us. What is Etsy going to charge me to sell this item? So our first thing to look at here is a listing fee. Etsy they have very reasonable pricing. They charge you 20 cents to list an item, and that's that lasts for 4 months unless you sell it, and then if it's relisted, it's another 20 cents. So 20 cents basically for the transaction. Then they have what they call transaction fees. And just as an FYI, I will put links in the description to a couple of key pages within the Etsy seller help where they lay out the fees. I actually find they're very clear about what their fees are, but you have to know where to find the information. So I'll put in a couple links to help you get some of this info. So they have transaction fees, which they break into two separate categories. And you'll see this on your monthly statements. It takes a little while to figure out how they lay things out. Not necessarily the best, but anyways. So the transaction fee is 5%, and that is basically on your retail price. If you were a shop where you were able to offer gift wrap and charged for it, they would also include the gift wrap fee in the transaction. But basically, with the case of print on demand, it's simply the cost of the item that you're charging. So, okay, in this case, I've put that I'm going to charge somebody $15.98 for this particular item. So the transaction fee would be 5% of that, or 80 cents. Then they have a separate transaction fee specific to the shipping charge. So they will take 5% fee on whatever you have charged the buyer for shipping. Why they don't just add it together, I don't know. It could be that it's related to how certain jurisdictions need to see the information. But it's also helpful, I think, because you can sort of, I think you can see the component parts of it working independently of each other. Okay, the last major fee that I'm talking about here is payment processing fee. Etsy does also have options for certain sellers of doing shipping labels, but that really doesn't apply for print on demand because you yourself are not printing out the label and shipping the package. That's the whole idea of print on demand. You don't do that. So, but the payment processing fee is based on the total amount the customer has paid, including any sales or VAT that they have paid. So because of the complexity of trying to, if you could, if you choose, model that out for a lot of different sales tax levels or VAT levels. But for simplicity's sake here, I'm simply figuring the payment processing fee on the retail plus the shipping. But just to let you know that it would normally also include any sales tax that the buyer has paid. Okay, so another fact about the payment processing, this is related to Etsy payments, and it depends on where you are. Again, this will be one of the links I have in the description. They actually have a very good chart, and it shows based on the country you're in what your payment processing fees are. So here in the United States, the payment processing fee for a transaction is 25 cents plus 3% of the customer's total. So in this case, it's 25 cents plus 3% of $20.97, which comes to 88 cents. So for this particular transaction, for this simple model, the total of the Etsy listing and transaction fees will be $2.13. So add that to my cost from the POD vendor. I have a total cost of $17.07 with the pricing and I have in here. Okay, so this is where you start playing around. Now, I have, as an initial starting point, I put in a retail price of $15.98, shipping of $4.99. So I would get total $20.97 from the customer. And then we deduct all of our various fees and other costs, and I come to a gross dollar profit of $3.90. Now, some sellers actually I would hope a lot of sellers on Etsy, if they're doing handmade goods, they will apply an hourly rate calculation to this. How long is it taking me to prepare and ship this transaction, and what does that translate to me for an hourly rate? Now, in the case of print on demand, I've generally not applied that because you're doing the vast majority of the work up front. You're doing your design, you're making your listing, you're setting everything up. You might go in and tweak your SEO, or you have to handle some customer service issue or something. But for the most part, on a per transaction basis, you have almost no time yourself that you put into it. So I tend to ignore that part of the calculation. You could do something, do some sort of calculation like that if it's important to you. In this case, I'm choosing not to. So this is where you can start playing around with some of your pricing ideas and just see, okay, am I getting an acceptable return on what I'm charging? And plus, you also need to do, of course, some evaluation of what your competition is doing. So if you're selling t-shirts or you're selling mugs or any of the other very popular print-on-demand items, go and look at your competition. What are they charging? Because a lot of the stuff is pretty fungible, and if people aren't thrilled with your pricing, they could go find that they can often find something similar. So for certain categories, you really need to pay attention to the competition. Now, this is also, I think, where it can be useful, because if you're not familiar with Etsy, has this where they've been trying to get people to do free shipping. They were really aggressive with it last year in 2020. They've been much less so, I've noticed, this year, but they do still try and get people to do it. And so, but you need to figure out for yourself. Is offering free shipping worth it? You know, either just up front. So say you have an item that, okay, it's a higher priced item, I'm going to charge $69 for it. Let's see if I can, how it works out if I don't charge shipping. Okay, so here's my Etsy fees. So in this example, the vendor is going to charge me for the item. It will charge me $33.01 odd amount, but that's what I found for something. And then they will charge me $12 to ship it. Okay, so that winds up being $45. And you know, with the $69 price, but no shipping, my fees from Etsy wind up being $5.97. So I do wind up with, you know, an $18 gross profit, which is 26%, you know, a 26% margin, which is pretty, you know, not too bad. And of course, it's a higher price item. You're not likely going to sell as many of them. I think it can be a good exercise in seeing, is there a price point I can use where I can simply offer free shipping up front, because Etsy will put a free shipping banner essentially on it. Then there's also the situation where you can offer free shipping. Like it's like if they buy $35 or more in your shop, you just automatically offer free shipping. Now the trick there is, so you know, you could play around with a couple different models, because a lot of times with the print-on-demand vendors, the first item might be like $6.99, but the second item would be $4. So that you know, winds up being a different calculation. So let's use our example, like for our first item, our $15.98 item. So I'm actually gonna do the multiplication and say, okay, somebody's gonna buy. No, actually, that wouldn't add up. We'll do the 1969. So we'll do 1969 times 2. So it's $39.38. We're not going to charge any shipping because we're trying to figure out, is it worth offering shipping, you know, free shipping in this case. So this is a case where it's our $10.95 price. But we know that the vendor is going to charge us the $6.99 for the first one. And then they're going to charge us $4 for the second one. The gross margin in this scenario winds up being only $2.89. Of course, you didn't really have to do much for that because, you know, you did all your work ahead of time with your designs, but it's still something to think about. Is it even worth it? Because you're going to have other overhead. Or do you take the approach of any positive input is good because, you know, in my shop, because just because of the way the print on demand works, I don't, you know, I have other overhead, but I don't have any other transaction costs. So really only you can determine where your cutoff is for your gross profit, what you're comfortable with, because then from there, that's sort of your starting point. And then you have to look at other costs associated with your business. Are you going to try and run ads, whether it's through Etsy or some other platform, to try and increase the number of sales, which would likely reduce the profit per sale, but you know, you would get more sales. That's a calculation you're going to have to make, and highly dependent on your market, your particular niche, and what your sales look like. But I hope that helps a little bit, walking you through some of these concepts. It's pretty basic, you know, you look at what is the customer paying you and what are your costs. But you have to look at what are all the little bits and pieces of costs. It's not just what does the POD vendor charge me. Because especially if you're on Etsy, they have, as you can see, they have a lot of little fees that can add up. And of course, if you're running a print on demand through your own site, you are going to have transaction costs there as well for like your payment process or anything like that. So you would apply some similar calculations there. But I hope this has helped. And I will put as I said, I will put some links in the description to some of Etsy's key help pages that will help you understand some of their fees. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.